Lytton's on fire.
After days of record-breaking heat in Lytton, British Columbia, a devastating turn of events this evening. Reports that a wildfire has engulfed the town as residents fled. Still not a lot of details on this story from official sources, but our Tanya Fletcher has been working the phones, talking to some of the local politicians, for example, to try to get some information on this fire. And Tanya, what have you learned?
Yeah, Ian, it's interesting. This fire sparked up so quickly. We've heard reports of just how fast the flames swept through that. So far, we've had very little provincial response, at least in an official capacity. But the local MLA for the area did send out a tweet. So let's show you what it says there. Jackie Taggart is the MLA. It says, hearing reports of catastrophic damage to the town of Lytton, praying everyone has made it out safely. I'm waiting for a briefing from BC Wildfire Service, and we'll share new information as it's made available. Please follow BC Gov Fire Info for the latest info and stay safe. Otherwise, I've been checking, the Twitter accounts of some of the ministers in cabinet. They've basically been retweeting emergency info BC. That's where, of course, Drive BC has been updating the most information about the closure of Highway 1 in both directions through the area, and as well the BC Wildfire Service with the latest information.
Yeah, again, just not a lot of information out there at this point, which is why we continue to work the phones. Tanya, you have reached out to the Premier's office.
Yeah, I have, and I actually just got a message back. We have a text from the Premier's office asking for a response from John Horgan. They say, all of government is focused on this horrible situation. Emergency crews are doing everything they can. Premier John Horgan is receiving constant briefings on the evolving situation in Lytton and the fires around the province, and all resources are being employed to support the people of Lytton right now. So that's from the Premier's office. No doubt we will be getting more reaction, hopefully tonight, but definitely tomorrow. Still nothing from RCMP or local officials in the area. It appears they're all still in emergency response mode, just simply trying to get everyone to safety and make sure those evacuations are going as planned. That evacuation center has been set up in Merritt, we know that. And so we'll keep you up to date with the latest as we hear more from the official provincial response from the government on this developing story. Ian?
Think about this, Tanya. It was just a couple of days ago you were covering a news conference from provincial authorities as they talked about how promising things were looking in terms of the COVID situation. And now we're in the middle of the heat wave, the heat-related deaths, and now waiting to find out what the total destruction is or damage is from this fire in Lytton. All right, keep working the phones for us. We will continue on this story here of the wildfire in Lytton and other places in BC's interior. Our coverage on The National continues after this. We are following breaking news tonight out of Lytton, British Columbia. After days of scorching hot temperatures, a wildfire has raced into the village and has engulfed portions, at least, of the village, though we don't yet have details of the extent of the damage. Hours ago, there was an evacuation order. The mayor was emotional as he described the scene.
The whole town is on fire. I've ordered the town evacuated. And I've told everyone, as I was leaving town, to leave. It took like a whole 15 minutes from, the first sign of smoke to all of a sudden there being fire, everywhere.
Katie Nicholson is one of our reporters who is trying to track the latest details on this. And I know, Katie, Tanya Fletcher mentioned just a few minutes ago, very little information from the official sources. What are you hearing?
Well, we just spoke to a woman who was evacuated to Lillooet. She's there in a recreation center motel with about 30 other people who managed to get away today as the town was engulfed. She says her son was still there on site trying to fight back the fire in Lytton. I also wanted to reach out to firefighters and find out, what is it like? What are the logistics of something like this? So I got a little background for you. And, for the people on the ground who actually are trying to beat back the flames here, terrain is a huge factor, I'm told. And fire can actually move rapidly uphill, which is sort of counterintuitive. Right now the temperature and the lack of humidity, these are creating ideal conditions for the fire to move. And of course, we know earlier that there was quite a bit of wind. So, firefighters that I spoke with say this is a major issue. The other thing that you have to manage is your resources, your water resources. You're not always going to have, water on hand. That stuff has to get dropped in, very carefully managed. Plus the sleep rest cycles for the people, the crews who are on the ground trying to beat back these fires. And the other thing I've learned is that municipal crews now, municipal fire departments have put the call out, and they are putting people on the ground to various wildfires that are breaking out across the province right now. So some new information, for example, North Van Fire Department is going to the Spark Lake fire, which is, of course, near Kamloops, another one of the fires that we have been tracking. So that's pretty much what I have for you this hour that's new. And I'm hoping that soon I'll be able to come to you with a little bit of our interview from Cheryl James, who describes what it was like when that smoke quickly became a wall of fire and threatened to consume the town and her escape. So we'll have a little bit more of that coming up.
Okay, look forward to hearing that. Katie Nicholson live in our newsroom here in Vancouver this evening. All right, let's get some more information now about this fire. Erica Berg is a BC Fire Information Officer. Erica, what can you tell us about what's happening in and around Lytton?
Yeah, so this incident has been obviously a really scary one. We can confirm it's an agency assist fire for us. So the Lytton Fire Brigade is actually the lead agency for this incident. And so we at the BC Wildfire Service are just doing all we can to support them with our resources. We've done so by diverting some resources where possible on other incidents to respond to this incident. For example, we've also had a incident management team diverted and is now assigned to this incident.
What have you heard about the status of the village of Lytton?
I don't have too many details. I would recommend folks to reach out to the Thompson-Nicola Regional District for evacuation details. As well as you've likely heard, the highways have been affected. So please refer to Drive BC for more information on that.
And what about the status of the fire in terms of the size of it, the ferocity of the fire, how quickly it's moving? What can you tell us about that?
I apologize, but I don't have those specific details. Like I said, it is the fire that the Lytton Fire Brigade is the lead agency on that, and we're just being told, where to go and how we can assist best. So I recommend reaching out to the local government, Lytton.
So Lytton is a tiny village. I assume the fire brigade can't be that big. I'm just surprised that that they are the lead agency, that they have the resources to fight what sounds like it's been a pretty big and potentially overwhelming fire.
Yes, this is a overwhelming fire for any department that a fire going through a community is challenging, regardless of how many personnel you have. So they've called upon us, and we've responded. We've provided some air support, some crews, and we are here and willing to support however best we can.
So we're just getting to, I guess, past the point of sunset here in British Columbia. So in terms of air support, what does that mean? Is that helicopters with buckets? Is it water bombers? And how does the late hour now affect that part of the firefighting effort?
Yeah, so as we've been experiencing throughout the province, it has conditions have been dry throughout June, and then into July we've had this heat wave. So it's made it so that we don't get much in the way of reprieve or recovery overnight, and that will likely mean that we have crews working 24 hours. In regards to aircraft, I don't have those specific details. I imagine we are just doing what is best for our personnel as well to stay safe.
Okay, Erica Berg, Fire Information Officer with the BC government. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll continue to work on getting more details of what's happening in Lytton, British Columbia, in BC's interior. We do know that there was a wildfire that broke out in that region, that residents report seeing the smoke, then the fire, they're hearing the evacuation order, and also leaving the village quickly on the Trans-Canada Highway. But beyond that, not a lot of information about what's happened to the buildings within the village, hoping all the people from there did manage to get out safely. We'll continue to follow this story tonight on The National. You're watching breaking news coverage here on CBC of the wildfire, particularly in the area around Lytton, British Columbia, in BC's interior. And let's head now to Abbotsford, British Columbia, which is in the Fraser Valley, as we look at some pictures of the smoke from that wildfire in Lytton. But in Abbotsford, Brad Viss, the MP for Mission, Matsqui, Fraser Canyon, the MP for that region, joins us now. And what do you know about what's happened in Lytton this evening?
Well, thanks, Ian. The situation's really dire, and the Mayor Polderman, in a matter of 15 minutes, had to get out of town and issue an evacuation alert. I've been working closely with the TNRD this evening. We were successful in getting an alert out. TNRD was successful in getting an alert out recently to let people know who evacuated Lytton to head over to Merritt on Coldwater Road to the evacuation center and to register. So right now, in real time, people are just doing everything possible to make sure that everyone is safe from the village of Lytton and the Lytton First Nation as well.
And so those initials you mentioned are the regional district, which is basically the equivalent of the municipal government in that area. And you know, a lot of people from British Columbia who are watching this now are you know, concerned about this fire. And there's some very basic questions, and maybe you have some information on this. First of all, what about the village of Lytton itself? What is the extent of the damage there?
The extent of the damage is still ongoing, but what I've heard from the TNRD is that it's very bad. And I've been hearing from constituents directly too who have already lost their homes. The situation really is dire, Ian.
And what about the status of people who were there? Are the authorities confident that everyone got out safely?
I don't have up-to-date information. All I can say, what I've been told, is that the situation is dire, and the authorities are trying to account for everyone right now. And that's why it's really important that all evacuees go to Merritt to register as soon as possible, to get online and follow what the TNRD is saying, to make sure that authorities can account for everyone in this situation right now.
Yeah, that's good practical information, obviously. So you mentioned that they go to Merritt and register, but you know, we talked to a town councillor who is in Ashcroft, a different town in British Columbia. People who have already made their way to, you know, Hope or Ashcroft or wherever else it is. Should they still move on to Merritt, or can they call somebody from where they are?
Yeah, the situation is so in real time right now that they have put up, people should be contacting the emergency number listed by the village of Ashcroft. And hopefully you got your staff, your producers can put that on the line, so anyone listening right now can call that number and register with the emergency services with TNRD. Because the fire happened so quickly, literally within 15 minutes, the town was enveloped in flames. And people, some people went north to Lillooet or to Spence's Bridge and on to Merritt, and some people headed south down to Boston Bar. So really, people just took the highway route, what I'm told, that got them out of town as quickly as possible. So it really did happen very quickly. And what's really unfortunate, we've seen all these news stories the last couple of days saying Lytton's the hottest place in Canada ever. And just 2 days ago, I remember tweeting that, man, I really pray we don't have a forest fire here right now, because that would be really, really bad. So we're really in a worst case scenario right now for what's going on in the village.
And Brad, one last question. I do appreciate you're making these calls from a little ways away in Abbotsford, and that it is a very dynamic situation. In fact, I'm going to mention the time that you and I are talking right now, just in case somebody is watching this later in the evening. Right now, it's 9:46 Pacific time. At this point, do you have a sense of what is happening inside Lytton? And by that, I mean, is it you know, safe enough for the RCMP to be in the village, kind of going place to place, or what's your best information about what might be happening in the village itself right now?
I understand that there's probably fire crews still in the region, and RCMP were making sure a few hours ago, the last information I received, that everyone was being evacuated as quickly as possible, because this just did happen so quickly. And I think our first responders are working we're working, from the last information I received, to make sure that everyone was accounted for. And that's why, again, I just can't emphasize enough to call the emergency services number on the emergency order from the village and Mayor Polderman, and to let officials know that you're safe, so we can account for everyone in this ongoing situation right now. It is really bad out there, sir.
Yeah,
Ian.
listen, I really appreciate that, you didn't wake up this morning expecting to be on the national news talking about basic information like calling this number, but I appreciate that you're doing that. I appreciate that this is a dynamic situation, and we will track down that number and report it on the air, hopefully before the end of the hour. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you. And again, to anyone listening, please contact the emergency number listed by the Village of Lytton, and please make sure you're safe. There's resources there to help you. Everyone really is working in real time right now to make sure everyone is safe.
All right. Thank you very much. And our coverage here on The National will continue after the break. We're following breaking news tonight out of Lytton, British Columbia. A wildfire has swept through the village, but at this point in the evening, still not a lot of details about the impact of that wildfire on structures there. We know that people fled, and we have reports of people who have made their way to nearby towns and villages. The mayor emotional as he described the scene in Lytton. We're joined now by Anita Bath, and I know, Anita, you've been working the phones, reaching out to the community. What do we know about the help that evacuees are getting right now?
Well, Ian, I just got off the phone about 30 seconds ago, and I'm hearing that there are now 200 people who left Lytton, who went to Lillooet, and who are actually now stranded in Lillooet because of another fire blocking their other way out. So they're trying to figure out if they can go through the mountains to get somewhere else. So a scary situation for them continues really tonight. Another 250 people, I'm told, are in Kamloops. Others have gone to Hope and to Merritt. But what we're hearing from the tribal council there is that the Thompson-Nicola Regional District has not gotten in touch with them. They've tried to make phone calls. They're trying to get help, and they're not hearing back. So they say they're giving up. They say they're going to set up their own command center in Merritt. My source, Gary Abbott, says they've gotten no call back in hours. And his last words to me before he got off the phone were, as a nation, they're going to be taking care of their own people tonight. Now, I mentioned to him that you just had an MP on the phone talking about a command center being set up by the Thompson-Nicola Regional District in Merritt, and he says, well, they haven't reached out to us. They haven't heard, the tribal council there hasn't heard anything at all about this. So right now, Ian, there's a lot of frustration from local First Nations who feel like they're sort of on their own on this one.
Yeah, and a lot of you know, it is a dynamic situation, so it's hard for us, especially sitting here in the newsroom in Vancouver, to know how much of that is due to disorganization or just, you know, the kind of the dealing with a crisis, right? And where the most important thing is trying to fight the fire and making sure that people got out safely. Anyway, we'll continue to follow the story here, the Lytton wildfire on The National. And we're continuing to follow that developing story. The wildfire in and around the village of Lytton, British Columbia, according to the mayor. The wildfire that had been approaching the town has, in fact, engulfed it, although we have not had confirmation yet of what has happened to the structures within that small village. And Andrew Chang is in our studio in Toronto. And, you know, Andrew, as I watch this, and particularly as I talked to the MP a short while ago, it reminds me that in these stories, we are, you know, being seen by viewers across the country, but we also are potentially being seen by viewers who are right in the middle of this emergency. I remember going to Slave Lake in, I think it was 2011, and seeing people huddled around a television watching news networks. So what we're going to continue to do next hour here is not just report this story, but make sure that we give as much detailed information as we can for people in BC who either have left their homes and are wondering what to do next, or have relatives in the region and are wondering what's happening with them.
Yeah, there's such an important need for that granular level of detail, of course. And, you know, I think it's also important to realize that the Lytton fire really is just a progression of a series of nasty events that may neither begin nor end with Lytton. The tinderbox dry conditions from the record-breaking heat, the fact that the fire caught the residents of Lytton off guard so quickly, and that they've since been sent scattering in a variety of directions in that part of the province. A story that we're going to continue to watch. That's the National for tonight.
Lytton's on fire.
We are following breaking news tonight out of Lytton, British Columbia, a village now possibly lost to a wildfire. The mayor says that everyone was ordered out as the flames moved in around 5 o'clock Pacific time. People there described it as a race against time. Tonight, CBC meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff will walk us through the science. Anita Bath has the reaction from the community. And we begin this hour with Katie Nicholson, who's been tracking the latest developments. Katie?
Yeah, we've been speaking to Cheryl James. She's one of the people who, you know, had 15 minutes to gather her things and hop in a car, make that split-second decision. She and her daughter are in Lillooet. They're with 30 other people from the community in a rec center. Cheryl says that she left her son behind. He is one of the firefighters there in the community. He is still there. She hasn't heard from him. She's very worried about him. This all happened so quickly. First, there was smoke, and literally within 15 minutes, according to Mayor Jan Bolderman, there was fire engulfing everything in the town, in the village. The winds have been quite strong at this point. It was just a perfect storm of dry temperatures and powerful winds stoking up that fire and pushing it literally quite toward the village. 70-kilometer-an-hour winds south by southwest. That was the direction that it needed to go to consume the village, and that's indeed what happened. Here is the mayor.
The whole town is on fire. I've ordered the town evacuated, and I've told everyone as I was leaving town to leave. It took like a whole 15 minutes from, you know, the first sign of smoke to all of a sudden there being fire, you know, everywhere.
So, Ian, I think you can hear the emotion there. That's something that, you know, we've registered in speaking to all the other evacuees. There is shock, there is terror, there is worry, and there is deep sadness that this has happened to their town. They have no idea what they have left or what they'll come back to, or if there will be anything to come back to. We know that people have gone in multiple directions. I mean, it all happened so quickly. It's not like there was a plan. So some people went north, some people went south. We know there are highway closures. We've seen some riveting videos as well of fire all along the road. It calls to mind some of the escape videos we've seen of evacuations from Fort McMurray. So, you know, this is indeed a very serious situation. We know it is a serious situation. We've been told this for days now by conservation and forestry experts, that there were tinder dry conditions, that we were in an extreme fire danger zone right now, and that is certainly evident. This is what has unfolded this evening with this rapid consumption of this village. I've also been speaking with firefighters working municipally. We know that there is a call out now for municipal firefighters to help to sort of shore up some of these inland fires. There are about 41 fires right now burning in the province, and of course we know 26 of those sparked up just in the last 2 days.
All right, Katie Nicholson, thank you very much. And it is a scenario, as you say, we've heard about in other wildfires in places like Slave Lake and Fort McMurray, where people just jump in their cars, grab a bag if they can, sometimes not even that, and not sure when they come back to their community whether their house will still be standing. Let's turn now to Anita Bath, another one of our reporters who's live here in the newsroom. You've been working the phones, reaching out to the community, and what are you hearing?
Well, Ian, what you're talking about there is that adrenaline that people feel in these types of situations, trying to get out as fast as they can. So a lot of the people we spoke with early on this evening were really feeling that sense of panic, trying to escape those flames. Some driving through the town and seeing, a hotel on fire, other structures on fire around them, worried that those flames would catch up to them. But we spoke to a woman named Edith, who once that adrenaline kind of went away and she was able to really process what had happened, she was in tears. It was really heartbreaking, and she spoke about having to leave all of her belongings, in particular her photo albums. And when we've covered wildfires in the past, that's often what people talk about, their photo albums, all of their memories that they're leaving behind. And they're really just feeling that heartbreak tonight of having to do that.
And let's talk about another angle of the sort of broader story, not specifically dealing with Lytton, but throughout British Columbia. And it's been not just the brutally hot days, but also the dangerously hot situations.
Absolutely. In fact, we had 486 sudden deaths over the last 5 days. And to put that into perspective, that's a 195% increase from the average number of deaths around this time, which is usually about 165. Now, when authorities went and found these people, they say they were hot, they were unventilated, and they were usually at home alone. And we are expecting that number, that 486, to increase significantly, because that doesn't account for numbers of people who died today, and we heard from our CMP that there were several of them as well. So really, this heat has been absolutely dangerous, and it's also pushing our emergency health system to the brink. We heard about people waiting 4 hours for an ambulance. A woman we spoke with earlier was trying to get her grandmother to hospital. Her grandmother stopped breathing and luckily was able to get her breath back, and they ended up having to drive her to the hospital because even after that 4 hours, no ambulance came. They were worried she would pass away. Luckily, she didn't, but that's sort of the situation we're dealing with here. And once you do get to hospital, a lot of the emergency rooms are overrun with people dealing with heat exhaustion.
All right, Anita Bath, thank you very much. Earlier this evening, I spoke to Lytton Town Councillor Robert Leach, who described what happened when the fire moved into the community in late afternoon.
About 5:15, or around that time, there was a fire that started at the south end of the village. I was home at the time, and I saw lots of smoke coming up, and I knew this was right in town. And within 15 minutes, it was basically 100 meters from my house.
And so, I mean, I guess you took off next, but what did you see? Is that the point at which you left town or just left your house?
Yeah. When the smoke just kept getting closer and it was getting blacker and darker, we just basically pulled up the truck and just put everything into the truck and knocked on neighbors' doors. And by the time we were in the truck leaving, there was flames we could see within 100 meters of the house. That's how fast it moved.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds frightening. How did it feel to be in the middle of all of that?
Well, it was just a bit of a panic, but at the same time, it's like you just need to get yourself out. That's how fast it was. Get your pets, get all your valuables, get your neighbors, just get out of the neighborhood. That's what you needed to do.
So you went north on the highways you mentioned to the town of Ashcroft, and I assume you're seeing a lot of people from Lytton who are there? We are, yes, we did. We saw some people that lived down the street from us
They told me that their house was completely gone. They were near the beginning of the fire where it started, and the devastation on their face just says it all, that, your house, all your possessions, everything is gone.
What do you know about what's happening in Lytton right now? First of all, just physically, what the status is of the buildings in town right now.
To be honest, I'm not really sure what's happening in Lytton, other than what a few neighbors have told us, that some structures are burnt. Along the highway here in Ashcroft, we've seen 6 or 7 RCMP rushing towards Lytton. That's probably because the road closures, or the fire is just rapidly spreading even at this hour because of the wind.
Are you hearing anything about the status? I asked about buildings before, about people in Lytton. Did everybody get out?
Not really sure. It was a very quick 15-minute grab your stuff, go. You didn't really have a lot of chance to think about a lot of things other than just get yourself out of there.
So, town councillor from Lytton, who we spoke to a couple of hours ago around 8 o'clock Pacific time. As you can see, CBC News meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff has been with us throughout this breaking news coverage. Johanna, the weather station went down in the Lytton area hours ago due to a power outage, perhaps. What is the situation now?
Well, Ian, this is the last of the light across BC as we head into the late evening hours. And I'm looking at nearby stations. It looks like Kamloops, closest station to the northeast of Lytton, still reporting gusts of up to 50 kilometers per hour. Temperatures are still over 30 degrees as we head into evening hours. I mean, Lytton is the location of Canada's new all-time temperature record for 3 days running. But Lytton has been experiencing high 40-degree temperatures for 5 days. And the reason Lytton is often the hotspot is the same reason we're seeing these incredible wind gusts. This is the last capture from the weather station, seeing gusts up to 70 kilometers per hour before it went offline, just as the rest of the power to the village did. It's in the Fraser Canyon. That's where basically Lytton can bake. It's also where the winds rush through the valley. So that's why we're seeing these very strong southwesterly winds pushing potentially a second fire that popped up earlier today. That's what we're hearing towards the village, possibly at speeds of up to 20 kilometers per hour. That's how fast this fire was moving, Ian.
And the heat dome finally moved out. The temperature is moderate. I don't know if we'd say moderating, but reduced a little bit. But with the change in weather, actually more bad news.
Yeah, you said it. As this heat dome shifts eastward over the Rockies, it's opening the door to this refreshing marine air here in Vancouver, but instability for the interior. I've just got to show you, this is a look at the latest lightning detection map. These are live lightning strikes happening across BC right now. These are thousands of lightning strikes traveling up through central and northern British Columbia in this tinderbox dry condition. A lot of these storms, Ian, also elevated, meaning we're getting the winds and the lightning strikes, but not a ton of rain. So the big concern, Ian, we could be looking at dozens, if not, possibly hundreds of new fire starts through the overnight. Just talking to a fire scientist this evening, just a moment ago, and he said the message for communities right across the interior this early on in the season is everyone needs to have an evacuation plan.
Great having you along with us for this coverage tonight. Joe, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Tanya Fletcher is with us as well this evening, and she's been reaching out for official reaction and information on this fire. And Tanya, what do you have?
Yeah, Ian, I reached out to the Premier's office. They say all of government is focused on this horrible situation right now, and that emergency crews are doing everything we can. Premier John Horgan also sent out this tweet just moments ago saying the fire situation is extremely dangerous right now. Emergency crews are doing everything they can to support the people of Lytton. Please follow the latest updates from, you can see the official emergency info BC and the BC Wildfire Service there. I'm also told that Premier Horgan is receiving constant briefings on the evolving situation in Lytton and the province, all the fires around the province, and that all resources are being employed to support the people of Lytton right now. We've also heard from the local MLA for the area that she sent out a tweet, Jackie Taggart. We think we have it here. She says, hearing reports of catastrophic damage to the town of Lytton, praying everyone has made it out safely. I'm waiting for a briefing from BC Wildfire Service, and we'll share new information as it's made available. So that's the latest from provincial officials there, as we still await word from RCMP as well.
And Tanya, it was just a couple of days ago you were reporting how the province of British Columbia was, giving some good news about how the pandemic, the case counts were down, many restrictions were being lifted. But now with this new crisis, with the heat even before the fire, new pressures on the provincial government.
Absolutely, and the province has been facing increasing criticism as they were, doing a victory lap, as some say, with the COVID response and how we're reopening. And yet at the same time, this heat wave had already been in place for several days. And BC's public safety minister faced some of those questions today. And, he was asked, why the province wasn't perhaps better prepared or providing some of these critical information and communication services earlier on. Their answer was essentially that this is something that is unprecedented in BC. They were asked if they were caught flat-footed. He didn't outrightly admit to that or accept that notion. He said, a lot of this onus is on the communities as well. They will be waiting for recommendations that come from a report from the BC Coroner's Service looking into this sudden spike in sudden deaths over the past 5 days. And they do say they will be doing an overhaul of the Emergency Program Act, that legislation in the province, and the heat and all of the implications that come along with it will be a part of that and contribute to that overhaul. So that's where the province stands at this point, but it's not just about one singular wildfire here. Of course, this is encapsulates the whole heat wave, the wildfires, the deaths and the tragedy we've seen across this province, and this will be an issue that they're pressed on for weeks and months to come. Ian?
All right, Tanya, thank you very much. Now, the heat dome that contributed to the situation in Lytton is currently hovering over Alberta, where people are scrambling to try to find ways to keep cool and safe as the temperature rises. Carolyn Dunn now with what doctors there are seeing.
Tana Horsfall was thrilled to find a place to fill her water bottle on a Calgary city street. She's experiencing homelessness and says places like corner stores are simply not an option for her.
Then they're like, do you have money? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And sometimes the guy has to steal the water, and I don't want to do that.
Volunteers are trying to go where the most vulnerable people are.
There's going to be a lot of people and going to be ending up in the hospital and being really, really sick from this because some of them don't know how to look after themselves.
In the last 24 hours, dozens of ambulances were dispatched to deal with patients suffering from the heat, and Alberta hospitals had more than 60 heat-related visits.
We're seeing all sorts of things. We're seeing bad sunburns, but we're also seeing a little uptick in kidney stones and gout attacks as people get dehydrated. And of course, we are starting to see some heat exhaustion.
Hotels around the province are doing brisk business with people who can afford to pay for a reprieve from the sustained heat. And every guest calling in for a reservation asks the same thing.
The first question is, do you have air conditioning? And the second question is almost immediately, does it work?
But AC is a luxury many people cannot afford. So as a growing number of Alberta communities break historic records for all-time highs, people are coping however they can. Sydney Gray can't even find a fan to purchase, so she's been resorting to cold towels to keep her son Carson comfortable.
There's only so much I can do to try and keep him cool because we don't have central air, we don't have AC, and we currently don't have any fans.
And at least another day of stifling and potentially dangerous temperatures in the forecast. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
And we want to show you some video just into our newsroom tonight showing some frightening moments, apparently, as people are driving out of the area where the wildfire was spreading.
Oh my God, look at that. Jesus. Our house is actually doing pretty well so far. Holy shit, that's hot.
This is reminiscent of something we've been talking about before, and that is the video that people were taking as they fled Slave Lake and Fort McMurray, two huge wildfires in Alberta. And, you heard it in the sound of the people inside that car, and you can just imagine as you look at this video what it must be like to leave and not know what's at the end of that smoke. And when we talked to the town councillor from Lytton, he mentioned that even when he was, about an hour's drive away in safety, that the air quality there in Ashcroft started to look a lot like it looked in Lytton when he decided that it was time to flee. Again, here's another shot of the smoke from a bit of a distance of Lytton. And what we're still waiting for at this hour this evening is a sense of what is happening or what has happened in the village of Lytton itself. We heard the mayor saying that it was a dire situation. He said that the entire village was on fire. What we have not had from any official sources so far this evening is any confirmation of the extent of the structural damage to Lytton, or also the all clear that everyone made it out safely. Still waiting for official word on those two very important issues. Now, for those of you who may be watching affected by the evacuation and the fire and need help, here's an emergency number that you can contact. It's the Thompson-Nicola Regional District Emergency Operations Center, and I'm going to read the numbers that are on the screen right now: 250-377-7188, or toll-free 1-866-377-7188. We'll be back with more on The National after this. After days of record-breaking heat in Lytton, British Columbia, a devastating turn of events this evening, a wildfire spreading to the village as residents fled. So lots of stories to cover here on The National tonight, and here's Andrew in our Toronto studio.
Big story that we have been following is how in the days and weeks since the discovery of unmarked graves at former residential schools across Canada, how a number of Catholic churches have been burned with no one claiming responsibility. Last night, another church went up in flames, this time one not on Indigenous land.
Oh, it's going to crash. Oh, it is crashing.
Emergency crews were called to St. John Baptiste Parish at about 3 in the morning in the small town of Morinville, just north of Edmonton. But with flames already raging, there was little they could do but contain the scene. Speaking earlier today, Morinville's mayor was clearly shaken.
We need to deal with the shock and have an opportunity to grieve the loss to our community.
Visiting those charred ruins this afternoon, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney took a sharper line.
We all know that Canada has to redouble its efforts at reconciliation, but these acts of violence and intimidation is not reconciliation. It's not the way forward.
Police have not announced an official cause, but are investigating the possibility of arson. And St. John Baptiste Parish was not the only Canadian Catholic church to burn overnight. Nova Scotia RCMP are looking into a suspicious fire that damaged a Catholic church on Sebeganagate First Nation. That would make 6 Catholic churches that have burned in recent days. Meanwhile, yet another First Nation has announced the discovery of unmarked graves near a former residential school, again using ground-penetrating radar, this time near Cranbrook, BC. Here's Olivia Stefanovich on what we know and how it may affect the push for an apology from the Pope himself.
Childhood items line the entrance of the former St. Eugene Mission residential school, honoring the nearby discovery of 182 unmarked shallow graves.
It's just, it's devastating.
It's unclear exactly who was buried here, children or adults, or how or when they died. But what is clear, the revelation is igniting further anger and calls for action.
There are living priests, nuns, and staff that had a hand in this. Then find them.
The Prime Minister says there needs to be accountability.
Governments have their role to play, and the Justice Department no doubt will have its role to play as well.
But Justin Trudeau also says the Roman Catholic Church, which ran St. Eugene's, needs to take responsibility.
That's what people are expecting. I think it is a good piece of news that there are going to be meetings with Indigenous leaders with His Holiness.
A delegation of Indigenous people will travel to the Vatican in December, seeking an official papal apology in Canada for the Church's role in running residential schools.
The Anglican Church has apologized. The Presbyterian Church has apologized. United Church has apologized. And this is really part of truth and be part of the healing and reconciliation process.
Catholic entities in Canada have apologized, but the Vatican remains the only holdout.
The current climate in Canada relative to the uncovering of grave sites and whatnot has heightened interest all the way around.
A national outpouring of grief continues at memorials like this one. The president of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops says Pope Francis is open to delivering an apology in Canada at an opportune time. When that moment will be, he wouldn't say. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, Ottawa's virtual Canada Day celebrations will go ahead tomorrow, even as some communities across the country cancel their events in solidarity with Indigenous people. Today, the Prime Minister said both are okay.
All Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, need to take tomorrow, yes, to celebrate the country that we are, but also to reflect on all the work we need to continue to do and understand with respect and compassion that some of our fellow Canadians don't feel like celebrating tomorrow.
The Prime Minister has also requested the flag at the Peace Tower be lowered to half-mast to honor Indigenous children who died in residential schools. Well, Bill Cosby is no longer behind bars tonight. His conviction for sexual assault overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Jacqueline Hansen has the details of the stunning reversal and the response from Cosby's most prominent accuser.
This was more than 2 years ago. Bill Cosby cuffed and sent to prison. His fall from grace as America's TV dad broadcast across the world. Now he's free.
He just said his heart was racing. He couldn't believe it.
Cosby was convicted of drugging and sexually assaulting Canadian Andrea Constant. She initially reported the assault in 2005, a year after it happened. That delay is part of why a U.S. district attorney released a public statement saying he wouldn't charge Cosby criminally. So Constant pursued a civil case in which Cosby had to testify.
He basically gave up his right to remain silent and not implicate himself based on the promise that it wouldn't be used against him in criminal court.
In his deposition, Cosby said he had offered drugs to women he wanted to have sex with. When those comments were made public, a new district attorney decided to charge him. Judges on Pennsylvania's Supreme Court now say that was unfair.
The success of this appeal does not challenge Ms. Constant's story. It does not exonerate Mr. Cosby's behavior. All it says is this case was legally flawed.
Is this a blow to the Me Too movement? It's not a win.
In a statement, Constant called the decision disappointing and said she's concerned this could discourage other women from seeking justice.
I would urge people to look at this decision from a constitutional lens and not from a lens of sexual assault.
This lawyer says culturally a lot has changed since the DA questioned Constant's delay.
Now a district attorney might look at those circumstances and say, this is how victims respond in this type of situation. It's not atypical and it's not a mark against our victims' credibility.
Today's decision also means Cosby can't be tried for this particular case again. But there are dozens of other women who claim he's guilty of more. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Toronto.
So just a few of the stories we've been following tonight. But Ian, of course, the most urgent, much closer to where you are in British Columbia.
And here in the newsroom in Vancouver, Andrew, we continue to work the phones to get information about what's happened to the village of Lytton and to hear from people who fled the wildfires. That is coming up later on The National.